Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube video. So in this video we are going to continue with our job board application using Flutter and then Riverpod for our state management. And then we are going to use Express.js and MongoDB as our database, right? So in this video what we are simply going to work on, we are simply going to implement the vacancy details page, right? Vacancy details screen, that's what we are going to work on, right? As you can see, we have this rounded circle item and then we have this big icon here. So now, without wasting much of the time, let's dive into Visual Studio Code and let's start coding our application, right? So inside our vacancies, right here under vacancies, under screen, we can just create the vacancy details screen .dat. Okay, so basically now what we need to do is we need to go to our main.dat file, right? So we need to go to our route.dat file, right? So inside the route.dat file here, what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to copy this route here, and then I'm simply going to paste it here, and then I'm going to change it to vacancy details screen. So let's also make sure we change it to vacancy details screen. Okay, so now if we go inside our main.dat file, we are simply under routes. What we are simply going to do here is we are simply going to call routes.vacancy details screen, then text in a context, and then we are just going to return our vacancy details screen page, right? Vacancy okay, so if we go inside our vacancy details screen, let's just create a stateless widget, and then let's rename it to vacancy details screen. And then if we go back to our main.dat file, we're going to get the vacancy details screen right there, right? So now that we are done with this one, now we can start working on our vacancy details screen, right? We can start working on our vacancy details screen. As you can see from our vacancy details screen, the first thing that we have is the first thing that we have, if we go to our Figma, right here, you can see we have this rounded circle white item, and then we have this big item right there, right? So now what we're simply going to do is let's go inside our utils folder, and then let's create a custom circle icon widget. Okay, so I made a typo. It's supposed to be .dat. Right, so it's going to be a stateless widget. We're going to change it to circle icon widget, and then it's going to take in a widget, right? Because we'll need to pass in a widget, which is going to be an icon, right? Since this is dynamic, we need to get rid of the constant, right? We just make sure that it's going to be required this dot icon widget, because we need that icon widget right here, right? And then here what we're simply going to do is we are simply going to retain a container. We are simply going to retain a container. We are going to give it a height of 30, and then we also give it a width of 30. All right, so now the other thing is we need to decorate this container using the box decoration, right? And then the shape of the container, we want it to be a circle, right? So it's going to be box. We're going to use the box shape class, and then it's going to be a circle, and then the color is going to be white, right? So it's going to be colors.white. All right, so now we are done with this. So now let's go inside our assets folder, So we have the favorite icon here. We have the favorite icon, this one, and then we have the back icon. Okay, we also have the back icon. All right. So basically what we need to do inside our vacancy details screen, right? We just need to return a scaffold widget, right? Just need to return a scaffold widget and then body, and then we'll just give it a safe area so that it doesn't protrude to the notification area, right? And then we just want to return a single child score view, right? A single child score view, and then inside this single child score view, we just want a column of widgets, right? And then children right here. Okay, so if we go back to our Figma, right? So this is our Figma. You can see that we have this rounded back icon, and then we also want our favorite icon on the right, right? So basically what can we do here? So we'll use a row column and then give it a children, and then what we are simply going to do is we are going to use a custom circle icon widget, and then the icon is going to be an image asset, right? Right, so let's get rid of a constant here, right? So what we need here is under assets folder /icons, right? So if we go under our assets /images, sorry, images, and then we need the back icon.png, right? Back icon.png, right? So now I'm simply going to copy this custom circle icon widget also. I'm also going to paste it here. And then we are going to change this one to our favorite icon, right? So let's just change it to favorite.png, right? So what I'm simply going to do here, I'm going to change this main axis alignment to main axis alignment dot space between. Also one space between the row children, right? Space between, right? And then what I'm simply going to do here is I'm simply going to our if we go back to our widgets, right? Vacancy item widget, right? Inside our vacancy item widget right here, this card right here, right? So this card right here, if we go to our vacancy item widget, we want to wrap this card with our gesture detector, right? So if we go back, no, it's not supposed to be vacancy, it's vacancy list. So the vacancy list widget, right here. So what we are simply going to do right here is we are simply going to wrap this vacancy item widget right here. We are going to wrap it with a gesture detector, right? Gesture detector, and then what we want to do is if the user taps on this vacancy item widget, right, we want to navigate to the vacancy details page, right? So the first thing that we need to do is we use navigator.pushNamed, right? .pushNamed, right? If you still remember, from the route name is going to come from our routes class, right? It's going to come from our route class dot so let me check what we named this our class is. So our class is routes, right? So let's go inside our vacancy list. It's going to be, so let's import the class right here, vacancy details screen, and then we also need to pass some parameters, right? We need to pass the argument, right? We need to pass the argument. So the argument is simply going to be the data then of type index, right? So if we go here, it's okay, it's going to be vacancies, right? It's not data, it's going to be vacancies, and then index. And then what we are simply going to do is we are simply going to receive these arguments inside our vacancy details page. So if we go back inside our vacancy details page, details screen, right? So what we simply need to do here inside our build folder, we'll just create a vacancy variable, right, which is going to get our parameters from the modal route, right, of context. And then from our settings, and then arguments, right, and then as vacancy model, right? So now that we are done, with this one, what you can simply do is, or simply reload our application, right? Then let's see what happens when you click on this item. As you can see, now we are navigating to our vacancy details page, right? But it seems as if these icons are not appearing. I think it's because they have the same color, right? So let's go inside our favorite icon. Let's see what's the color of this favorite icon. As you can see, I think it's white, or it has a white background. So this one, it's PNG assets images. So let's go inside our pubspec.yaml file, assets images. So let's try to stop the emulator, and then let's try to run it, and then let's see if it appears. Okay, now as you can see, I think it's not appearing. I don't know why these icons are not appearing. Let's check. Let me try to change the okay, I see why, because we forgot the child. So the child is simply going to be our icon, right? So the child is simply going to be our icon, right? So now if we reload, these icons should now appear now. Yeah, now as you can see, they appear, but as you can see, they are close to the edges. So what we simply need to do is we just need to add some padding, right? So here, let's just add our padding to our row widget, right? So now if what reload, you can see now they are appearing now. So now we want to wrap this custom icon widget for our back button. We just want to wrap it with a gesture detector. And then what we want to do is, when the user taps on it, we want to go back to our main screen, right, to the previous page. So what we simply do is we just use the navigator class, and then we use the pop function, right? Then we use the pop function, and then now if I watch reload, and then you can see now we can go back. Okay, so now that we are done with this part, now we want to see what comes after. So now we have this text right here, which is also going to be bold, which is going to be of type bold, right? This text here is going to be the job title, and then it is bold, and then font size of 20, right? So now let's go back, and then after this padding, what we are simply going to do, is we are just going to input a text. The text is going to be vacancy.title, and then toString, right? toString, then we need to style it, and then the style is going to be text style, the color is going to be black, and then the font size is going to be 20, and then the font weight is going to be bold. Font weight bold. Right, so now what you can simply do, if we watch reload, you can see cross-platform mobile developer right here. It's appearing, right? And then what you can simply do is we want to also wrap it with a padding widget right there, right? And then let's see now how it appears, right? Okay, and then what follows next, let's go back to our Figma. If we go back to our Figma, now we have the salary here at the top, and then height is 18. This one, it is a height of 24, right? So if we go back to our application right here, we can put the height under textile, right? So the height is 24. Okay, so now if we go to load our application, okay, so now let's just get rid of the height, right? So let's get rid of the height. So what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to copy this padding right here, copy it, and then I'm simply going to paste it below. And then I'm going to change this from salary to, I'm going to change this from vacancy title to salary. I'm going to change it to salary, and then right here we need some spacing, so I'm just going to use size box, and then we'll give it just a height of 10, right? And then go back to our Figma, was implementing the UI from Figma. We'll go back to our Figma. Right here it says semi-bold, right? And then font size is 15. So let's go back, let's change the font size to 15. And then let's change from bold to W800. Let's try W800. Then let's see on our emulator, right? So as you can see, it's coming up from, what you can simply do, right, is under our, if we go under our column, right, column widget, we need to set some properties. We need to make sure that the main axis alignment is main axis alignment dot start. Then also the cross axis alignment is also cross axis alignment dot start, right? So now if I hot reload the application, now you can see now they are now close here. So now what we are simply doing here is I'm simply going to wrap this. We have already wrapped it with a padding widget, right? And then what follows next, if we go to our Figma, what follows next is the salary, right? It's the salary. So if we go back to our application right here, we just have to copy here, copy, and then paste it below. And then let's just make sure it's a spacing 10. Let's just copy, paste it below, and then let's change this from salary to vacancy dot salary, and then dot to string, right? Because we need to convert it to a string. So let's go back and check. And then as you can see, the salary is like, the font size is 13, right? And then font size is 13. Font size is 13. And then also the font weight the font weight is W300, right? So the font weight is W300, right? So what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to copy all this from the salary, right? I'm simply going to copy this from the size box to our salary, right? I'm simply going to copy this piece of code. And then what I'm simply going to do is I'm simply going to paste it here, below here. And then I'm going to change it from salary to job description, because it's almost the same, right? Job description, and then I'm going to change this from salary to description, right? So now what I'm simply going to do is, if we would watch reload our application, you can see now we now have a job description, and then we have this right here, right? And then the next thing that we also need, if we go back to our here on our Figma, we forgot the job experience, right? So we forgot the job experience, but okay, we'll simply copy it. We'll simply do the same thing here. So after this padding, I'm simply going to paste here, and then I'm going to change this to experience. And then I'm simply going to change this to also experience, right? So if we want to reload our application, you can see now experience. So it's because we didn't set the experience in our database, right? So make sure that when you are making, you make sure that there is also experience, right? Because we don't have experience here. Forgot to edit, right? So now what the next thing that follows is we also want this apply button right here. As you can see, this button is something like 378 and then 75 height, right? Black button, right? So it's going to be an elevated button, right? So what I'm simply going to do here is saying also need a spacing, so we'll use size box, give it a height. We'll give it a height of 10, and then okay, so let's check here what else is required here. Okay, I think we forgot also to add requirements. I didn't add it in our Figma, right? So basically what I'm simply going to do before we add our button, right, also need job requirements, right? And then we'll simply change this from salary to requirements, right? So now let's see how it's appearing. As you can see, 3 years of experience, and then now we can add our button, right? So after this padding line, we just need a spacing. So just use size box, give it a height of 10, and then we are going to use it's going to be an elevated button, right? Then we have on pressed, and then we have a child. And then we also need to apply a style to this button, right? So the style is going to be elevated button. So let's just get rid of this elevated button dot style from, right? As you can see from our Figma, get a color, get a background color of black. did a background color of black. And then what else do we have? If we go back to our Figma, you can see that we have these rounded edges right there, right? We have these rounded edges right there. So that's like 10. So we need to add those rounded edges right there. So we use the shape, right, which is going to be a rounded rectangular border. Rounded rectangular border, then the border radius, and then we use border radius dot circular, and then we just input 10 here. And then the text for text, the text is going to be apply. So this is going to be our apply button right there. And then we need to style the text. So we'll give it a color of white. Give it a color of white, and then we also need font size. So give it a font size of 18, and then also font weight, which is font weight. Want the weight to be bold, right? Font weight dot bold, right? So now if I reload, if we go to our vacancy details page, right, you can see that our pattern still is not similar to the one that we have in Figma, right? So basically what we need to do is we need to wrap our button with a sized box, right, so that we can give it a height and a width. So it's going to be size box, right? If we go back to our Figma, let's go back to our Figma, and then we check it's 378 for our width, right? The width is going to be 378, and then the height is going to be 75. Height is going to be 75. Okay, right. So now that we are done, we'll just center this size box, right? Just make sure that it's centered, right? And so now if I hot reload, now we can see now we now have this apply button right here. So now our UI is almost complete. Basically now what we need is the tags, right? The tags widget, right? So basically what we are going to do is we already created the tags list widget, right? So what I'm simply going to do is after this button, right, after this size box, right, after this center widget, what we are simply going to do is we need some space, size box, we give it a height of 10, and then what we need to do here is we need to return the vacancy text list, right? Vacancy text list widget, and then we need to pass in the vacancy, right? We need to pass in the vacancy, right there. And then the next thing that we have is we also have the company listing below, right? So if we load now, you can see now we now have those tags right there. They're appearing right there, the tags, right? We now have those tags right there, and then we need the vacancy listed by. So what I'm simply going to do here is this is going to be a text, then semi-bold, and then 15. All right, so what we can simply do is let's copy this text right here. Let's copy this text right here. And then after this, we simply wrap it with a padding widget, right? We don't want it to be stuck close to the edge of our screen. So I'm simply going to paste this, and then I'm simply going to type in vacancy listed by. vacancy listed by, and then it was 15, and then semi-bold, so we'll give it like W800. All right, so now let's wrap it with the padding widget. We don't want it to be stuck close to our screen edges. And then now we need to display the company profile widget, right? So we need to display the company profile widget. So let's go back and check what did we name the company profile widget, right? Okay, model. Do we even have the company here? Atom Technologies. Okay, so what did we list? I want to see. So under, let's go under vacancy item widget right here, right? So what we'll simply do here is, let's copy this, and then under vacancies, let's create a company profile widget. Company profile widget dot dat, right? So let's create, it's going to be a stateless widget, company profile widget. So here under return, we are simply going to return this, and then here we need to pass in the vacancy model, then vacancy model, and then let's get rid of this constant since this is dynamic, right? Required, simply under required so let's put a semicolon here. It's going to be vacancy. So it's going to be required this dot vacancy model, right? This dot vacancy model right there. Then so I don't know why we are getting an error. So let's just check what's going on here. Expected to find semicolon. Okay, since this is a raw item widget, this is a raw widget, so we need that boxed item. Right, so now we are done with this. So let's go back to our vacancy here, and then what we simply need to do is what we simply need to do is we need to return our company profile. So let's get rid of this, and then company profile widget, and then let's import it, add required argument, and then we will pass in the vacancy model right there, right? So same here, so vacancy profile widget, then here the simply going to pass in the vacancy, which is of type vacancy model, right? And then let's make sure that we wrap it, or it's already wrapped with the padding widget. So now if we restart our application, saying something is wrong. Expected before, where is it? Okay. Now, as you can see, now we have even the vacancy item here. So now let's go back and change the color at the top from white to black. All right, so now we are done with our vacancy details page, right? So we have implemented this UI from Figma. So if you have enjoyed this series, make sure you click the like button and also make sure you subscribe so that you do not miss any of the videos that I'm going to be posting, right? In the next video, we are going to be working on the favorite feature, right? Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.